Hey, good morning, Professor Tootle.
Good morning.
Hey, well, it's a bright sunny day. We've had like 4 days of rain in Colorado, which is great because we're in a drought. And but now it's nice and sunny, and it seems like summer's coming. How's it in California?
It's pretty nice. In fact, I'm going to be hitting the road, and I was looking at the weather and thinking it's. I don't want to go through the sort of hot areas, so I'm gonna enjoy, I think, some of the weather up in Northern California.
Oh, nice. Did you ever go on a trip last week, or did you hold that off till this weekend?
No, I was still in school last week.
Oh, okay. I thought you were taking a big trip last weekend. So it's this
No, no.
weekend.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, I hope you enjoy California. I've never been to Northern California.
Oh, it's amazing. You'd love it.
I've never been. I've been to Oregon and Seattle and Southern California, Central California, never in Northern California. Huh. Well, all right. Are we in our show? I think we're recording, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. Yeah, you
Yeah,
should, but
well,
you
good.
should go to Northern California. It's amazing.
Okay. Well, good. That was your commercial
Yeah,
advertise.
my
Brought to you by the Northern California Tourism Board.
yeah, exactly.
Good. So, Professor, I'm not unsettled. Kerplumped is some other word like that. I'm not unsettled, actually. I think I'm actually pretty balanced right now. But I know for a fact a ton of my friends are just like in wacky doodle land. They're pissed and they're sad and they're nervous and they're angst ridden. And so I reflect on that. And so some of it rubs off on me. And I try to just go, it's not as bad as you think. Or it could be pretty bad, actually. But what are you going to do about it? So I have hopefully some sense of maturity or all this, but I'm looking for more maturity. So that's you. So thank you, Professor, for being the mature guy amongst
Okay.
my broader sphere of friends. I titled this, and I don't know if we're going to spend a lot of time on this, but I titled things "The Things Often Seem Surreal." And what I mean by that is we're in a war or we're not in a war. Are we going to go in like ground troop invasion, or no, we're all just getting out? Or do I believe the Iranians more than our own government? And actually kind of sometimes I do. It just seems really confusing to me. This doesn't seem like any other wars I've lived through in my 59 years. So that seems surreal to me. I go to the grocery store and I'm just completely shocked. I mean, just astounded by some of the prices of some things. I'm just looking at it, I go, I can't afford that? How does anybody afford this? Uh,
Yeah.
I just look at the price of steak. I used to eat steak all the time when I was poor, when we were growing up and kind of struggling
Right.
to eat steak. And now I look at it, I go, God, hamburger's expensive. I don't want to even buy a hamburger. So I have this sense of surreal feeling. I think of the national debt and deficit, and I just go, it is just. I was worried about it. I was on the National Fix the Debt Committee on a speakers bureau nationwide, trying to educate citizens and make us aware that this is an unsustainable. 12 years ago, and now it's just gone through the roof, and we all seem to. I don't know. We don't particularly care one way or the other. I'm sure I'm missing. We do have to talk about this for a second, Professor. Um, and then I'll let you talk. I'm just trying to give you some handholds. Um, I am so astounded at this $1.7 billion thing. To me, it is so ridiculous. It's so obscene. It's so absurd. It is impossible that a person I would know in my life, the U.S. president, would propose this, and not as a joke. I mean, it's impossible. The Constitution doesn't allow for it, and fortunately, it looks like Republicans in Congress are saying the same thing I am, and they're going, "No, we're not going to do this." But I'm wondering, is it surreal? Are we going to do it even if they say no? Or how does he have the ability to do that? A settlement against himself? That is so absurd. That's a legal thing with Bart, I guess. So hopefully he'll join us. It is so absurd from my political science and my legal training and my 40 years of experience that I'm besides myself in shock. And so, therefore, I said we need to impeach him. And anybody that allows that to happen, we need to impeach him. And then Jake, our friend, Jake goes, "Hey, John, you're not alone. Jonah Goldberg does the same thing." Okay, cool. So Jonah and John say that he should be impeached, but the rest of the world, we all just kind of keep marching on. And so I have this surreal feeling, Professor. Are we in trouble? Are we good? Hey, we're good. And how do we know the difference on all this stuff and more? There's probably things in your mind that I haven't brought up. Anyway, so give a big historical perspective, Professor. How are you?
I'm, again, this sort of surreal thing of some things in my personal life that are really good and deserve, good health news from people around me. And
Nice.
And and you during times like that, you realize, oh, this is, more important than other things. Um, but you, and the weather is beautiful, and I'm looking outside my beautiful window at the beautiful trees, and of course it's nice, and I am, my kids are happy and healthy, and everyone in my family's doing well. So of course,
Those are good.
we're supposed to cherish those things. But um, I I think you're correct to be outraged about this proposed IRS settlement. It's
It's insane.
it's the end of our government, John.
Yeah.
Like, and I haven't heard any of the commentary from. I mean, I'm not surprised Jonah Goldberg saw this, but I haven't heard his podcast on it. But it's the most. Well, when Obama did it, it was it outraged me when Obama did it, and what
Which
Trump.
version did Obama do? Remind me though. What he
Well,
didn't
what
do the same
Obama
thing.
did was what Trump is essentially doing is sort of taking half of two bad ideas and putting them together into one giant bad idea. But
Okay.
what the Obama administration did, and it enraged me at the time, was it would essentially get around the idea of legislation by having groups sue the federal government, and then they would come up with a settlement agreement that would achieve what the
Mm.
policy goal was supposed to be. And it was this sue and settle policy, and it was absolutely insane. And it was a way of circumventing Congress, and it was completely outrageous.
So,
And to
Professor, I am fairly astute to politics, and I don't study it professionally like you do, but I'm probably a one percenter or maybe a 0.1 percenter. I pay attention to the news and blogs and watch all sorts of stuff and read widely. I That's not ringing a bell with Obama. So am I ignorant on this? Am I not paying attention? Was I busy? How come this isn't resonating with me on Obama?
I mean, it's one of those reasons why the news media has very little credibility, which is it was because President Obama was so popular. All if you heard anything about it, you would have heard about it in a positive light, which is to say that this was how the Obama administration was being creative in order to achieve justice for all of these deserving groups of people. You know that, and so and that's the reason why again, I guess it's a good example of why we need partisanship um, because you need somebody to look at what the other person's doing and say this is completely outrageous, And so Republicans all saw that this was completely outrageous when the Obama administration was doing it, and now the Trump administration is taking it to the next level, which is because he was in charge of the IRS during the period, he is suing himself
Right.
and awarding himself 1776, right? Um, he's awarding himself almost $2 billion that he can do with whatever he wants. And
Well, but
then
Professor, how is it possible that he could have an unnamed commission
because
that
it's his money and none of it matters. Like the commission, whatever, he doesn't even need to have a commission. Like
well, but you can't do this legally.
he can just put it in his bank account.
Well, no, you can't. Our
Yes,
founders,
this
no,
is exact. This is
our founders didn't have this big of a loophole where we could just say you can steal from the
of
government.
course not, John, but the Obama administration did it,
Well,
and
through groups,
yeah,
legally,
exactly.
and then you settle with those
And
groups.
then,
Okay,
but so Trump's just doing it for himself. So instead of it going to, nonprofit X, Y, or Z, he's just having it go to him. And then he's pretending like he's going to be, I mean, that's all fiction. The
the
whole
group,
commission, all that stuff,
yeah.
like none of that matters. None of it matters at all. This is a private settlement between the IRS and him. And so what happens to the money after that? That is Donald Trump trying to distract you from, in other words, get you arguing about this independent commission rather than focusing on this very simple thing where President Trump sued the federal government that he's in charge of and had his executive branch department award him almost $2 billion.
But and you're saying it's a fait accompli. It's already done. It's
Well, the way that this had always worked in the past is that the Department of Justice had always had this, the ability to settle, lawsuits. There's a,
Professor Nuance in the
yeah,
Obama, and sorry not to be aware of that. So I've got some research. That's nice to learn something.
yeah,
Thank you. Um, in the Obama, though, you at least had a judge sign off on it to see
right.
it, right?
There's none of this. None. Yeah, this is
That's
just,
a big distinction, though. Having
yeah,
a different branch of government think
I,
it's legit.
I guess, but yes, but I don't want to give cover to the people who would say, that. Yeah, I guess it is a distinction that the Obama administration would bother to get a judge to sign off on it.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
like
Well,
that's,
it was
I
searches.
mean,
It's a
to
big
me that's
distinction.
like who it's almost a distinction without a difference
No,
because
no, no. It's
Obama
like a warrantless
administration,
search. It's a really big, important decision because the judge isn't vulnerable to their lifetime appointment and they can go no.
one
So
would certainly hope so, but you could also, um, I mean,
I
it's
know.
unlikely that a judge would stop a settlement from taking place after it's
Okay.
been decided upon by the two parties.
So you are perplexed.
Especially if there was, and this is the important thing. It's not like the Obama administration was personally benefiting.
Right.
So, the judge would really never stop that settlement from
Yeah.
from taking place. But it
The
was
judge
a
probably
way
would have
that the
stopped this.
Obama administration could essentially get around Congress,
Yeah.
in policy decisions, and in funding.
Okay. I've got a good research project. So, but on this one, you were
But this is
upset.
so much worse because it's
Yeah.
bigger, it's indefinite, there's no legal oversight, and he's awarding the money to himself.
And so the reaction from American citizens should be,
That this is effectively means that Congress has no role potentially if it's allowed to go through.
yeah.
Role of Congress under our system of government would cease to exist if this goes
Well,
through.
but that's Article One powers of our Constitution. That's why you said our gov and this is the end of our government.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So we should be like, what was my start? Hey, should we be concerned? I mean, are we okay?
Yeah, you should be really concerned. I mean, this would be the ultimate abdication of all congressional authority and oversight. And the the people who don't stop this are either stupid, evil, or liars.
Boy, that's a tough statement. Okay, so Professor, you're with me on this.
I
This
guess
is
we could throw ignorant in there too. Ignorant, stupid, evil, or liars. Yeah.
I didn't know you'd be with me so strongly. This is a really big deal, and
Yeah.
yes, he should be impeached, and so should everybody
Yes.
else. I mean, just get
Yes.
yeah. This is a
This
red
is
line.
this is an attempt. This is an attempt to undo one article of our Constitution.
And well, the most important
This
article.
is this is the destruction of one branch of government,
Yeah.
the end of the legislative process in
Okay, so
America.
Professor, I do want to raise this then. When I posted this a couple days ago, I posted on it twice because I'm so upset, and I'll probably write on it again. That
But
my
here's John, here's the thing I also want to say, like some Republicans are already doing the thing that the Democrats did with Obama. They're saying, "What's your problem? He's just gonna, take this money. He's gonna build a ballroom. He's gonna build a freedom march. He's gonna give money away. Like he's setting up. You're focusing on the result that you like. Like you like a new ballroom. You like an arch. You want money to go to these people, and you're not focusing on the fact. And the Obama administration did it too. right? I mean, the Democrats, what they did is they're like, what's the matter? You don't like Native Americans? You don't like farmers? You don't like civil rights organizations? Like, and we all need to get past this point and realize that the underlying principle is the thing that is so important that if it doesn't matter if you like Native Americans or an arch or January 6 people or like it doesn't matter. Like you need to be focused on preserving the institutions of the American government. Um, Not like is he doing a thing that I like? You know,
Yeah. And I don't know why we as humans have a hard time doing that. I'm semi or pretty good at it, I hope. DACA. I actually like the result. I don't think kids can commit a crime. So to give them some kind of temporary, against prosecution from deportation, actually, I like DACA. Dreamers, that makes sense to me. But he didn't have the authority to do that. Congress wouldn't do it. And that's when he said, well, I've got a pen and I'm going to do stuff. So he just did it without Congress. Well, but that's just a really bad. It's bad for society to give that much power, non-vested in him. By if Congress wanted him to have that much power, they'd write a law giving him that much power, but they didn't.
it, this is so much worse than that. But yes, I
It's
mean,
oh,
but it's
yeah,
the same principle. Like it was the same thing. It was essentially the Obama administration deciding that they were going to use the wartime powers that the Bush administration had used in peacetime, and
yeah,
just wait for the courts to catch up. And then Trump administration comes along, and one of the things actually, here's an irony for you. One of the things that the Trump administration did in the first term was send out a DOJ memo ending this practice. It's like the first Trump administration actually did a good job. One of the good things they did was that they said, we're not doing this anymore. They rescinded the practice of the sue and settle to achieve policy aims. And good. And now here's Trump 2 reversing the the DOJ policy from Trump 1 and saying not only are we going to achieve a policy objective that Congress hasn't achieved, not only are we going to fund something that Congress hasn't funded, but it's actually going to go to me personally. And like, then I'm going to pretend that it's going to go through some process. But that's all a fig leaf, John.
well,
Like,
but to your point on that fig leaf, which is really important, it's not you saying that. It's actually in the agreement. There's a paragraph in there. Once we transfer this funds, we have no responsibility. We can't claw it back. We have no accountability. There's nothing.
yeah,
That's not our money anymore. The federal government say right in the contract, the settlement contract with Trump. It is to your point. It's 100% his. He can do whatever he wants, and there's no accountability period.
yeah, yeah,
It's in there.
yeah. And
That's crazy.
this is the president taking money out of the general fund and giving it to himself.
That's crazy, Professor. That can't happen in America.
Yeah, I certainly hope not.
Well,
But
okay.
here's the thing that again, this like the practice of the Obama, the thing that made it so tough was that the Obama administration, their policy, what they did was they withdrew the money first, and then they waited for people to sue about it. And so that's like where I'm scared is that will he just withdraw the money and order the IRS to just take the money and give it to him? And will they actually do it? I mean, I'm waiting to see if there is a transfer of funds. Like if
And
that money leaves the 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 bank account of the United States government and goes to the
one
bank.
top lawyer from the IRS has already resigned.
Yeah.
Uh,
But
but
it reminds me a little bit of what Andrew Jackson did with the Bank of the United States. I mean, but
I don't just but I have no idea
oh,
what you're talking about.
so when Andrew Jackson wanted to kill the Bank of the United States, he he withdrew the deposits from it before the bank had even expired. And he said he had the executive authority to do it, and he withdrew the money out of the Bank of the United States chartered by the Congress, and he just put it into private banks controlled by his friends and political supporters. and he couldn't, and the people who wouldn't do it were fired, and he just kept firing people until he found someone who would do it. And what I think Trump will do is, I mean, somebody in his administration admires Andrew Jackson. It's the portrait that he hangs,
Right.
and he here he is like acting like Andrew Jackson during the bank war. I'm gonna
So,
just keep firing people until I find someone who will do what I tell them to do.
Professor, we got through that. Obviously, that somehow got unwound, right?
Yeah, I mean it took a while. I mean essentially it took 80 years.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, I mean it completely messed up the financial system of the United States, and it didn't do the thing that it was supposed to do, which was decentralize. I mean, what Andrew Jackson was worried about was the federal government having too much control over the American economy, and what ended up happening is that essentially a small group of private bankers controlled the American economy for the next 80 years. And I guess we should all just be happy that they did a pretty good job. But it is also something that led to the rise of the progressive era in the first place was, you know, we've got a half a dozen rich people who are controlling the economy of the United States and and it's what led to the creation of the Federal Reserve. Bec
Fast.
in order to get around because it was proposed by a Democrat. They couldn't simply propose a new central bank um, so they came up with this Federal Reserve System that's allegedly decentralized, but really isn't.
Right.
But it
Well,
had
that's an interesting piece of history we haven't talked about in 5 years that somehow came about because of this conversation. Wow,
yeah
thank you for that. So, Professor, what do we do? I know you talk about, well, I'm going to go for a motorcycle ride. I get it. Uh,
yeah
and I'm I'm coordinating conversations on citizenship, and they've been great, by the way. You get people, and they're going, "Well, how do you get involved, and what do you do?" And things we've been talking about on the show, I'm summarizing in a conversation. We're give and take, and they're fun. So that's one of the things I'm doing. I'm trying to teach people how to really make an impact with local legislators and commissioners and mayors, and what their role is with Congress people, and you should try to get a congressperson to know your name. Why? Well, because I don't know. You'd be a 0.1 percenter. If a congressperson knows your name, you actually know you're making some impact with that congressperson. It's that kind of class. So I'm doing stuff like that. But what do we do as a society when things are starting to go amiss and awry? So we've got 5 months before the November midterm elections. There's some crazy, weird stuff going on in primaries. The Tillis thing is, well, Tillis is leaving, but Bill Cassidy was an interesting thing. We'll see what happens next week. And the Cornyn is a really interesting thing. There's some fascinating. Well, and who is it? Lindsey Graham said that this is, you just got to be 100% with Trump. This is a Trump party. It's not a Republican party. You got to be 100% with him. What are you expecting? Well, it's really interesting to hear somebody like Senator Graham say that. So, do you have any reflections on the where we are now with the primaries, with these big issues, deficit, war, all these things, and primaries going on? Then we've got 5 months till the general. Give us some big picture historical advice on what to do.
well, I guess that the first thing I'd say is like don't share clickbaity headlines created by partisan news organizations or that argue about the periphery of this issue. Don't get dragged into an argument of whether you think it's a good idea to have a freedom march. Don't get into it or a settlement fund for January 6th. Like this is one of these issues where I would say if you want to be helpful in this discussion, you need to remain laser focused on the idea, do you think it's okay for a president of the United States to order the IRS to give him close to $2 billion dollars? And don't get dragged into any other peripheral discussions because I can tell you that your Republican friends are going to say, "Oh, this is completely outrageous that you're upset now because you weren't upset when Obama was doing sue and settle." And you say, "I agree. It was completely wrong when Obama was doing sue and settle." So you think it's wrong, right? So you're as outraged at President Trump or more so than you were at President Obama, right? I would say start with the idea that like, do you think we should have a constitution of the United States? Do you think that Congress should be in charge of legislating? And do you think that Congress should be in charge of appropriating funds? And do you think it's okay that a president would be able to order his administration to give him $2 billion, close to $2 billion, and don't get dragged into any discussions about anything peripheral to those issues, and just get whoever you're talking to at least see that that is what President Trump is doing, and and once they acknowledge that, that's all that matters. Say, what should happen to a president who withdraws money from the orders the federal treasury to give him almost $2 billion in cash? And but again, you can almost hear the discussions, right? They're going to want to talk about, I mean, and your liberal friends are the same way. They're going to be sit there going and and giving money to the January 6 people or this arch or this ballroom or whatever. Like, it's completely insane. But the method of distraction is going to be similar because people can't help themselves.
Yeah, they can't. And so, one of my liberal friends, in fact, it's many of them, I bet you. They said, "Oh, you're upset about this one, John. What about the 79 other things he's done that are crazy and stuff?" And I go, "No, this one's different. This is really a big deal. Don't you see how this is different?" And they go, "Don't know. They're mad at the arch or or taking away the Tuskegee Airmen thing. There's lots of weird stuff that he's done. This one's different."
Just can say I concede everything. Yeah, I can fine. I can see the point. Now let's get on to the point. Like, let's get on to the heart of the matter. Um,
So, you think it's actually going to happen, or you think there'll be enough backlash?
I don't know. I mean, there have been so many times in the Trumpet years where I thought, surely this must be the moment when. I mean, really, the only people who matter here are Republican senators.
Yeah, but I just watched a clip on the news. It's like seven of them in a row came out, and they're going, "No, this is crazy." No, I
Well,
mean,
good, because if there are 20 of them, I mean, Trump has to listen.
well, I guess 25 of them spoke up in their private meeting with, and that's really unheard of either. They were pissed and they're mad and they're so. But to me, in a normal
Well, that's
time,
what I'm waiting for. I said I wanted to have a show next week before the mics heated up, and I
okay,
said what I want to have the reason I want to have a show is I want to know, did they stop this? You
okay.
know,
All right, so we
that's
will
what
have
I'm.
a conversation while you're out on the road, motorcycle road trip somewhere. We'll have a conversation and do a reprise. Talk to me about Iran. Do you have what's going on? And
Iran, first of all, let's remember that I'm old school. Iran is part of the axis of evil. You
okay,
should
good.
not you should not believe anything that they say. They have
Yeah,
negotiated in bad faith with every administration, Republican and Democrat, and their only goal with regards to the United States, is the destruction of the United States, the destruction of Israel, and for them to be a nuclear power and a world power. They are an evil uh, terrorist regime, and there is absolutely no point in making a deal with them about anything.
okay, so Professor, I'll stipulate to all that. You're an old-fashioned hawk. I'm mostly that way too.
Well,
Cool.
I guess I'm not saying that. I guess in the sense like I don't always advocate military force as a solution,
Yep.
but But I'm just saying you should never believe anything that they say or any piece of paper that they sign is worthless.
Great. I stipulate to all that. Now tell me about Iran. What are we going to invade them? Are we just going to let them have this stuff? Are we going to eventually open up the strait somehow? I mean, aren't we kind of in a bind? I mean, aren't we this is really kind of an unfortunate awkward situation. There's a lot of Europe that's mad at us. I don't think China's particularly in love with us. Asia, Korea and Japan need the oil, fertilizer nationwide, the grocery stuff. I don't see grocery prices going down here in the near future. I don't see gas prices going down. It seems like we're in a really awkward situation. Now, is that all Trump's fault? If I stipulate this to that
Well,
Iran's
I
a
just
really
want to
bad
say it's Iran's fault. They're the ones doing it, and what they're
guy.
doing is wrong. But it is also Trump's fault for um, executing this policy in the way he did. It's not the military's fault because they're just doing what they're told to do. But I think what really happened was, I don't know, I guess I'd say it's similar to John F. Kennedy in the Bay of Pigs invasion. John F. Kennedy scaled back the Bay of Pigs invasion because he thought that the people of Cuba would rise up against Castro and he could somehow, through a more limited military action, achieve his policy goal. And instead, he ended up doing exactly the opposite and making the world worse off and almost, and, creating the situation that eventually led to the Cuban Missile Crisis, which is the closest the world has ever come to being destroyed. So the Bay of Pigs invasion was pretty bad. And what Trump did was essentially the same. Um, Instead of having a narrower set of objectives and declaring victory, get in, get out, and say, we're not there anymore. And then handling the next crisis, he declared this goal and then he failed to achieve it, which now has created the situation where by simply surviving, the Iranians can claim to have won and they're able to use their um, um, drone technology in order to close down this militarily and commercially and strategically important area of the world. But and they're able to sort of do this tit for tat thing where they say, well, sure, we're blockading the Strait of Hormuz, but you're blockading us. And a blockade is an act of war. So I mean, it's one of the reasons why, again, getting back to the Cuban Missile Crisis for a moment, it's one of the reasons why we didn't call it a blockade when we were blockading Cuba.
Mm.
We called it a quarantine, which is absurd, but it was a blockade. But there's a reason why Kennedy wouldn't call it a blockade. It's because a blockade's an act of war.
Yeah.
Um,
You're doing a
uh,
good job bringing history into current events. Thank you, Professor. That's why we have the show. So thank you for that.
yeah.
Professor, Adam Kinzinger, I'm probably like a 6 or 7 out of 10. I've never been a huge fan of his, but generally he's probably a pretty good guy. He did write a column on Iran, and it wasn't mealy mouse. It wasn't middle of the road stuff. It was just talking about how difficult this is. And there's really two options. One is we just declare victory and leave. And the second is, yeah, we got to finish this thing. We got to actually go in with ground troops probably and kill more people, leadership, and take the nuclear stuff. We've just got it. It's going to be bloody and it's going to be brutal. But the thing is if we just declare victory and leave, 7 or 8 years from now, we're going to go back and do the same thing again. It's good. So he's not even recommending that. He said this is a really bad situation we're in. I don't know what to do, but if it was my sole decision, I guess I'd go in there with all the power we have and win, just plain win. Do you have any inclination, though? I mean, between those two extremes, if just declaring victory and leaving and going in there and all out war? I mean, I just have this. I don't like the situation we're in, but we're in it. So what do we do?
With this president,
Yeah.
Don't know that either. I mean, I don't think either of those things would work. And um, I mean, I guess because the military is supremely competent, that if he just went in and said, you know, here's, I guess, but it would, I mean, legally, could you get a declaration of war from Congress right now?
Mm,
I just don't think that's
not sure.
possible. But
Yeah, I think it
I
is
mean,
either.
that's what I mean. Like with a different president, we would have different options. Because if George H.W. Bush was president or Dwight Eisenhower was president, you could also easily imagine, at least I could, that what would have happened would have been we would have been in such a solid position legally and morally and strategically that we could have turned to the regional allies
Yeah.
and said, okay, regional allies, we'll do everything except go in with ground troops. And you guys go in with ground troops. We will destroy the Iranian regime, and you guys go in with ground troops. And the only thing that we're going to ask is that you open the Strait of Hormuz, and then, but explain to the American people, we might also get a bad regime in Iran, and we're not guaranteeing any kind of future success. Like we're just making sure that, international waterways will remain open, that sort of thing. But this president couldn't do any of those things. I don't even think the options you laid out. Um, I think the only thing that he could do is declare victory and withdraw. Um, or whatever. I mean, there, I don't know. There could be some, I don't, I mean, some covert operation, or perhaps that I'm not aware of, that could be a possibility. But um,
So you're in a surreal situation with Iran as well. It's a bad. It's just really there's just no good option.
no, but I mean, there never was. But having a president like President Trump certainly made it worse.
Okay, well, damn. Okay, talk to me about deficit again.
But his policy was like, I mean, like again, like just let's never forget to throw Obama under the bus too, because this is also because of what Obama did also. Like, and
okay, talk.
like they both were terrible on Iran as well. If
Uh,
anything, their policies were worse, like, which is really saying something. The idea that we're gonna just buy them off, and and the JCPOA that Obama signed, it would be expiring anyway, like right, not too long from now. So um, we haven't had a serious president who thought about and executed foreign policy in a serious way since George W. Bush.
okay, I take back my last question and I ask you this question instead. How do we? I saw. I think it was Josh. Is it Josh Dunn? Or I'm not sure who it
Gosh,
is.
John. Yeah.
Yeah, wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post. I think was it Josh that did that?
Yep.
Okay, and I saw that you shared it, and I read it as well. Civics is back on the rise again. Civics slash how do we get statespeople back in running for county commissioner, all the way up to president? How do we get a more thoughtful, non-social media YouTube star? How do we decide to get serious people back in education, in science, in politics, in sociology? How do we get what happened? What's the deal with our infatuation with the train wreck or the weirdo? I mean, I like weirdos. They're fun, but that doesn't mean I want them in charge. How do you
Well,
do this, Professor?
and I want to say something that is, I'm happy that that we're showing progress, but understand that California is one of the states that mandates civics education. But you can't just pass a law saying you have to have civics education, because what has happened in California is that they have a bunch of people who hate the United States and the Constitution creating the curriculum, and that it becomes essentially an anti uh, you
Makes it worse, huh?
anti uh, the purpose of the legislation.
Yeah.
Uh, and I mean, I
You're not,
used to, I don't, this isn't true anymore, but for many years, when people would doubt me, I would say, I want you to look up what qualifies as the American institutions requirement at UCLA. And they've updated their website so it doesn't say this anymore. But it just used to list the classes you could take to qualify for your American institutions requirement. And it was a bunch of stuff that had absolutely nothing to do with the United States. And you'd say, how is that possible? How can you take gender studies in Latin America since 1900 and say that now you know the US Constitution? And the answer is the people who are in charge of approving that curriculum just simply said, well, I think it does, you know? And if you're not watching, that's what happens to your educational institutions. And so what really needs to happen is that for every single college and university in America, that board of trustees has to actually dig deep enough to find out if civics education is actually happening, and they have to find out how do people get around this? Because
not only the rules, but the exceptions to the
yeah,
rules.
because I teach the classes that count towards the American institutions it's basically all I teach, you know. But as someone who just turned in their grades, I can tell you that getting a C in my class doesn't necessarily make you qualified on the Supreme Court. Um, and and there are many, many different ways. For instance, my older son, he satisfied that requirement for high school and for college with a 4 week online summer school class, you know, and it was a good class. And I absolutely, he didn't take it with me, but I looked at the curriculum, I looked at what he learned, and it was like, yeah, this is good. Great. It was great even. But man, it's, it's, it's not enough. It's a start, and we should be happy with the achievements, but it's not enough. And I think one of the things, if I were to, I don't know, maybe John, you and I need to do this, but like if I were to actually go all in on this project, I think what's really missing is some sort of independent final test that that's not for students, but it's for the teachers. you
Mhm.
know, because another thing that I've seen just over the years is that
Talking like a PhD dissertation. I mean, are
no,
you?
I mean, honestly, it would just be something very similar to the old subject matter GRE history test. I don't even know if it exists anymore that the College Board put together, but it was just sort of a general history knowledge test. And um,
Just
I,
fill in the bubbles, you mean? Just a
yeah,
normal.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I can tell you that some of the people I've interacted with in the last 28 years who are high school history teachers are amazing. I mean, they're incredible. My buddy Greg up in Auburn, they they should just be like bowing down and thanking him every day for going to work and being an amazing high school history teacher every day. Um, and some of the history teachers here in my hometown, like incredible. I could name their names, but I don't know if they want their names public. But like, I've reviewed their curriculum. I know them as people. I know what books they're assigning. I know what they cover in their classes, and it's amazing. But here's the other scary thing. We also interview people for jobs here. And I can tell you there are people who have been teaching AP history in classrooms for 20, 30 years who don't know anything about US history. The, and in particular, um, one of the most shocking things is how often, because this is what's encouraged by, you have to essentially fight what you've been taught and what is encouraged by the educational administrators. Because what educational administrators like is for people to sit around and share their feelings.
Hmm.
I've seen so many teachers who come in and we ask them a question, something simple like, I don't know, to give a 15-minute teaching presentation on fill in the blank, lend lease, right? And they can't do it. They'll walk in the room and say, "How do you feel about lend lease?" And we're sitting there going like, "What's lend lease?" Like we have no, that's not teaching. At a certain point, you have to be able to communicate content. And when you talk to people who teach high school history, they often don't know the basics. Like you can get through college, you can be, at least in California, you can teach junior high history and never take a single history class except for world history up to 1500. You can fulfill your American institutions requirement by taking poli sci, and then you can get your teaching credential and never take a single class in US history. And most states have some kind of a workaround. But here's the other thing. Like taking one class is not going to do it. You have to constantly be working and reading and adding uh, and if but typically what happens in most school districts is if you're not a problem, you're left alone.
Hmm.
And the only way you'll ever be a problem is if you have standards in your classroom.
Okay, so Professor, this is insightful and interesting in a field that I'm not in, education. I believe you, so I'll stipulate to all this. The big question, though, that I asked was how do we get better elected officials? How do we get more competent leaders in every field? Education was one of them. But in science, in civic organizations, in government, in people running for office, how do we get serious people again? And so I think you're giving me, well, probably,
To
probably,
vote for serious people. Yeah, I guess I would say vote for serious people so that the serious person always wins, like
back to the civics thing, though. We look at the wild and the obnoxious and the incredible and the sexy and the weird and they go, that person's entertaining or that person's going to take it to them. And I'm going to go vote for the troublemaker that will destroy it all. Hooray, the government needs to be rebuilt. And so we vote for the car wreck instead of the serious person.
I don't know that that's true. And this is the part where uh, I know I'm going to make people mad when I say this, but the American people almost always vote for the more normal candidate.
Okay, I love this. I think we should
I,
study.
I think there have been some exceptions to this, but they have to vote for somebody who's on the ballot. I just voted myself last week, and I held my nose for a couple of those people, and I thought, I guess I have to vote for one of these people.
Yeah.
Uh, and um, in the election between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, like the American people were voting for who they thought was the more normal candidate. In the election between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, they voted for the person who they thought was the more normal candidate. Like between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, they were voting for the person who thought was the more normal candidate. Um,
Okay, so you think Normal will win against JD Vance? Okay, or
yeah,
Rubio?
but I just don't know if the Democrats will nominate a normal person.
Yeah, that's probably
I think what both parties have essentially done, well, the Republicans didn't do this, the essentially Trump was exploiting a weakness in the party. He wasn't selected by the party. Um, but in the case of the Democrats, they have generally said, well, we're definitely going to win this election. So now we should elect a true wacko because there's no way we can lose this. And the number one thing that I would say, the number one problem I have with most of my, I mean, this happened to me last week with one of my closest friends who's, a Democrat, but I just couldn't believe how he couldn't see the radicalism of his own position. He could see it very clearly when Trump was doing exactly the same thing. But what was it he was defending Obama on? It was one of those things where I mean, there's like a litany of things where if you want to test your Democratic friends to see if they're people who see, when Obama was doing bad stuff. And one of them is the Rose Garden speech after about Benghazi,
Yeah,
because so it was after the um, um, attack on Benghazi, and in the middle of a speech that wasn't about terrorism, he happened to say that it was an act of terror. And in the full context of the speech and how they acted for that entire weekend, the Obama administration was not saying it was an act of terrorism, but a hyper partisan Democrat will go back and they'll say, "Look, he said the words an act of terror,"
yeah, yeah,
and they'll say, "Okay, I got it." You're somebody who doesn't see it on your
yeah.
own. Um, yeah, and there are a couple of other, instances like that in the Obama administration that are kind of classic examples. But yeah, I don't, I wish that, I feel like a partisan Democrat needs to find some trusted friend and say, I want you to be my uh, my eyes and and tell me when I'm being crazy.
Well, we
Uh,
kind of all need that though, too, don't we? I mean, you and I need that as well, don't we? Or are we perfect?
yeah, everybody does. That's why you turn into a weirdo if you stare at your phone. You got to talk to real human beings.
Fair enough. You're more optimistic than I am on bringing structure and stability and thoughtfulness back to elected officials. I don't think you're going to think that's going to happen this midterm or even next election, though. The
Uh, no,
presidential.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I
To
make,
do.
what's that?
We got some work to do civically and culturally and governmentally. We've got to fix some things.
Well, it just takes longer to fix the more something becomes a precedent. When
I think that's
what it's like when Obama did it, we could fix it by having one president who didn't do it. Um, and, and essentially it was ping-ponging back and forth. Obama, then um, Trump, then Biden. But it's like when Biden doubled down with the radicalism, then I was really concerned. Um, and then now that the Trump administration is governing like Obama and Biden, it's just going to take two or three normal presidents in a row
to
to,
kind of get out of that track where,
yeah. I
yeah.
mean, it's we've gone from this is a 4 year problem to this is a 12 to 16-year problem.
Yeah, okay. I agree. When Biden did all those last minute pardons, including his family members and Kinzinger and Cheney and all, I mean, all those pardons, I was going, oh, this is not good. This is really not good. And then look what look what Trump did. I'm like, oh my God, this is not
And how
good.
about his just him saying that he declared a constitutional amendment to be part of the Constitution? Biden did that. And it's
Yeah,
like
yeah, that was but that
so
was
weird.
but that's not true. I mean, that's just so dumb. Uh, God. Okay. Give me one line or two, and then we got to see if Bart will add in a question. I also like his. He didn't know what we talked about initially, but
Yeah, I wish he was here for the beginning.
he can, he can
But maybe
rewind.
we should ask Bart for a fresh take on how he sees it if
Okay,
he
let's
was
go ahead and
here.
do that and declare victory for today. Bart, are you with us,
I am.
We're
Professor?
gonna,
Here
Professor,
we're
I'm
gonna put you on the spot and see
here I
if you've
am.
been watching the news. Yeah. So, without because you weren't here when we were discussing the President Trump's decision from the IRS to allocate funds to himself. So I guess I'm already asking it in a loaded way, but I just want to know what your take is on it and see if it's as
help us, Bart.
Yeah, no, I'm really, really glad that you asked that question, Stephen. In fact, I don't know if you've already listened to this or not, but Sarah Isker and David French did a great evaluation of this yesterday in their
okay.
advisory opinions. And yeah, I would commend anyone to listen to that because it's great. They were struggling to figure, there were so many things wrong with this legally that they couldn't actually catalog all of them. Like
Wow.
number one, Trump is basically, by doing this, he's essentially trying to pardon himself and his family for any civil wrongs they could have committed against the United States of America, I guess, in tax collection. Although, if you actually read the so called settlement agreement, it's much more broad than that. Essentially,
Mhm.
the federal government, for anything the Trumps have done before the current date, basically, whatever date earlier this week, supposedly this agreement was entered into, they're essentially given a free ride on anything they've done or not done, whether it's legal or illegal, civilly or, criminally. I guess Trump could pardon himself and his whole family.
Yeah.
So this is sort of like Joe Biden on steroids. You
Yeah.
were just talking about what Biden did. This is that on steroids.
I'm glad you brought that up because that wasn't something that I mentioned, and it is absolutely outrageous, and it's a thing that I don't think a lot of people understand, which is that he's he's yes, he's always had the ability to pardon himself, and yes, it was outrageous when Biden did it. But here's the thing that Trump is doing. He is pardoning himself and his family from civil litigation as
Mm-hmm.
well, which is something that is not in the Constitution,
Yeah.
has never been attempted, and there is no precedent for it anywhere in American law.
How
Uh,
can you?
I should have brought that up. Yeah, for civil. Yeah,
How do you do that? You can't do that.
right.
Right.
Of
No, but
course
Exactly,
not.
John.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm glad
no,
I
You've
need to
hit
go
the
back and
nail
listen
on
to the
the head,
podcast
John.
because, like I said, it's hard to catalog this stuff
the
because there's
government have a contract with itself that would prohibit another outside entity not party to that contract by saying you can't sue.
it's
That
absurd.
would happen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
it's totally
yeah, thank
nuts.
you.
Not only that, and this is only scraping
Yeah,
the
that's just this is the beginning. I'm
yeah,
like,
this is just the
why?
beginning because
Right.
I mean the stuff, Stephen, that you would probably want to talk about is that he's essentially appropriated federal money. He took money from the US general fund, such as that is, and he moved it, oddly enough, to the US Department of the Interior. That's where this money is now located, these billions of dollars that he's stuck over there. And one of the things David French and Sarah suggested yesterday is what he's really doing is creating a pot of money for him to build his arch in Washington, D.C. Because why else would you give it to the Interior Department? Those are the ones who deal with federal lands and parks and all the monuments and stuff. So of course he's going to rely on the former governor of South Dakota. Who's the Secretary of the Interior right now? His name escapes me. Yes, Burgum. At
Yeah.
some point, one of the things they were speculating on in the advisory opinions podcast is, hey, what Trump is going to do is wait for people to apply for this And if no one applies, Trump's going to go, well, let's just change the purpose of the money. Let's build this arch.
Yeah.
And Doug Burgum, I'm ordering you to do it.
Right.
But I mean, this is so extra constitutional. You can't do this, basically. That's what this goes in the category of, is you can't do this. Not to mention the people eligible to apply for reimbursement for weaponization. It could include people like James Comey. Because, I mean, what happens if they dismiss this latest indictment, so-called indictment of him? He could apply for reimbursement from this fund. He's being, he could say, well, they weaponized against me or something. So what is going on here? We're, and getting back to something, Stephen, that you were talking about earlier, and this is a little off the direct subject that you just kind of prompted me on. It seems as though what the prescription that the United States needs is people starting to run for public office who are very good at communication, modern communication through social media, but also serious people. It seems that what we've done is the main qualification we've put out there for people to run for office today is, oh, you've got to be really good at social media, but you can be an absolute dweeb and we'll still vote for you. And it's like, wait a minute, what's going on? And I'm a little optimistic about this because I found some people at the local level here in Colorado that I work with. I'm still the chairman of the Stormwater Authority Board, that covers our county and our city. There's a woman who's serving on that board, who's one of the county commissioners right now, who is extremely liberal. When I first met her, I thought, oh gosh, what's going to happen here? Well, after working with her for like more than 3 years now as a member of the Stormwater Authority Board, I'm actually trying to help her get reelected as a county commissioner because she's actually fantastic. Even though she's extremely liberal, she's a very serious person. She studies issues. She actually, the thing I worried about with her being on the board I'm on is, oh my God, this person seems to know nothing about public works, stormwater. Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing she did as a county commissioner is she became the county commissioner that was in charge of public works. And she actually had to interact with some of the hardest people in the county here. I mean, John, you can remember some of these people. The people who do public works, they tend to stay there forever, literally. So she launched herself into this group of people. And I thought, oh my God, what is she doing now? Here's this person who should be doing like welfare programs and jobs and stuff. But no, she's worried about filling potholes and plowing snow and building roads. And I was thinking, what is she doing? Well, 3 years later, I have figured it out. She wanted to learn about all of this stuff. And she actually helped out with the county because she's one of those people who comes up with interesting ideas. And when you really think about them, you kind of have to go, gosh, part of that actually makes a lot of sense. What happens if we actually did part of that?
Yeah.
And, I'm thinking there are serious people on both sides of the aisle right now. And we got to tap into those people. At the local level, I don't know nationally. There are 500 and God knows how many members of Congress. Some of them have to be halfway decent. Okay, there's just too many people involved.
How do you guys find these people? How do you feel about your congressman?
What's that? About our congressman?
Both of you guys. Do you have the same congressman?
Yeah, Jason Crow. Isn't that your congressman too, John?
Yeah, I think he's
I think Jason Crow, I don't know. How do you feel about him, John? I
think he's a pretty serious person, and he's engaged. Yeah. I've been to a couple of his town hall meetings, and he's opened them to the public where I got in, and so I have generally fairly positive feelings about him. I appreciate his war service and his, I think he's good. I wouldn't say he's my favorite, but he seems to be confident. How about you, Professor? Do you still have Valadeo, or are you somebody else?
No, I was never in Valadeo's district. I have a Democrat, Jim Costa. He's sort of the last conservative Democrat in Congress.
Ah.
Um,
Okay.
this is the, because of the gerrymandering that took place in the Valley, you get these the last the last of the breed in a couple of different areas where I'd say we have, in some ways, one of the last serious, powerful Republicans just to the south. We got the last Republican who voted for impeachment just to the west, and then my actual congressman is kind of the last conservative Democrat. Um,
It sounds like you actually live in a reasonable area of
Yeah,
California, Stephen.
yeah.
yeah, I think so.
So,
Well, I don't know if they're reasonable, but it's
Yeah.
yeah, it all works out sort of. It's the last, and to that end, this is the last part of California that still is growing.
interesting.
The
That's
So,
rest
really
of the
interesting.
population is declining. We're the only part where they're still building houses and growing, and not declining.
gentlemen, we're almost out of time here today, but I do have one oddball question for you that I think you'll be surprised that I'm asking. So I want to see if you can shut me down entirely or whether you went, wow, okay, this is scarier than I thought. Ready? Because of the absurdity of what President Trump has done with this settlement with himself, it occurred to me that there are 3,000 counties, 3,100 counties, and I don't know how many cities there are, 9,000 cities are across America, that every home rule city, everyone with a strong mayor run government, that the mayor's in charge, they don't have a city manager, every governor, uh, every lawyer that works for a variety of governments has to now wonder whether the chair of the board of the supervisors or commissioners can settle with him or herself and take county dollars or city dollars or state dollars and give it to themselves. So I think there's a ton of lawyers around the country that are looking at their constitution and looking at their charters and going, wait, can something like this be happening next week in our own darn municipality? Now shut me down.
Well, in any other context, this would be called corruption, and there are laws against it. The only reason why President Trump is able to do this is because of the unique powers of the president. In any other context, I mean, we've had city councilmen who did this sort of thing, award construction contracts to friends, no bid, that sort of thing, and who then contributed to their political campaigns, and
And
that
what happens to them?
they went to jail or they got fined or they lost the next election. It's really
Mhm.
only the president who can claim this sort of
So
because
you're confident this is a one-off with the president of the United States, Professor. How about you, Bart?
I agree, Stephen. Although I will say my caveat in agreeing with you is that I think John is right. This bit about suing yourself or taking some kind of an action that's outside the box to get a result.
yeah,
Our political leaders have been doing that forever. Okay.
yeah,
There's nothing particularly unique about that. They have never quite done it on the scale of the example we're talking about here because the example is so ridiculous when you get right down to it. I mean, another thing that was pointed out about this example is that there was no actual lawsuit being settled. It's
yeah,
like, in prior examples of this, like during the Obama administration, you had environmental groups sue the EPA. And
yeah,
then you had a settlement, the so called sue and settle stuff going on.
right,
At least you had a lawsuit.
yeah,
Here it's like, what the hell is actually going on? The IRS, Trump is claiming that he could sue them for releasing his taxes during his first term. Well, the statute of limitations, another thing Sarah Isker pointed out, the
yeah,
lawyers amongst us, the statute of limitations to do that has run. So you
yeah.
can't actually do that. So it's like, what the hell's going on here? This is like rank collusion.
Well, here's a question for you that I had actually, Bart. And they didn't. I don't know if they addressed this on advisory opinions. So, but wouldn't um, wouldn't the unitary executive be hoisted on its own petard here? What I mean is that um, because the IRS is part of the executive branch, and Trump was the president when the tax returns were released, he would be suing himself.
Another point that they did talk
Oh,
about.
did they? Okay. Yeah. I mean, but this is absurd. Uh,
Yes.
he would be suing himself for something that he did and
Yeah.
then awarding himself the money for what he did
Exactly.
to
That's
himself.
exactly what he's doing. That's exactly what he's doing. And, and a thing that occurred to me that no one has talked about is that he's claiming this is a settlement with himself, right? Well, if you do that, you kind of, if the tax laws are really complicated, but sometimes you have to recognize part or all of a settlement like that as taxable income if
But
it's
then
not compensating you.
he could cheat on his taxes and then be immune.
Basically,
Yeah.
I was thinking, kind of spitting that out in my mind. It's like, are we crazy here or what?
Yeah, as part of his settlement, he's immune from paying taxes on it because he gave himself immunity, both civil and criminal.
Oh yeah, I mean, the whole thing is so outrageous. It's beyond. It's one of those things where you go, like the title of our show today is this surreal?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
surreal. It's like,
I just can't believe, when I check the news headlines and that it isn't the news headline on all the news sites, and I did a scan of morning news and it's not the lead story.
no,
I and I guess to the point where it's like and the only stories that I saw about it were hyper partisan and focused on what to me are non-essential parts of this.
mm-hmm.
And I just wonder, how could we ever expect people to be outraged if they have if they have no idea that it's going on, and the only people who quote unquote know what's going on know the wrong thing or are focused on the wrong thing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Um,
so true, so
we're going to
true.
talk about this again next Friday, but I do want to see if Bart agrees with your premise, Professor, that we got to not get into the level of detail, just look at the plain facts on its face. So will you outline that to Bart on how not to get distracted by the where the money's being spent? I want to see if Bart will agree to that or not.
Well, what we might need to explain it to Bart a little bit more. What I was saying is that what we need to do when we're talking to our friends is focus just on the most egregious um, part of this that threatens the the independence of Congress, that threatens to destroy our system of government, and that would be a president who is able to award money to himself and then direct it. It would remove the power of the purse from Congress and essentially don't let yourself be distracted by anything other than that. With liberals or conservatives, just get them to acknowledge that that is the most dangerous part, and that it was wrong when Obama did it with sue and settle. And I'm glad it sounds like they mentioned that on Advisory Opinions.
Mm-hmm.
It was wrong to do it. So if it was wrong to do it when Obama did it, it's even more wrong to do it when this is a completely absurd cartoon version of it. This has absolutely no it's again proving my thesis of dumb Obama, right? Like this is the dumb version of of the smart wrong thing that Obama did.
Mm-hmm.
Because Obama and Biden always managed to make it legal, and
Mm-hmm.
which is frustrating because you're like, look what they're doing. You say, yeah, but it's legal. We can, and we like the results, so we should
Yeah.
for it, right? It's just a policy difference, and I was screaming up and down when those guys were president, talking about how wrong it was, and now when you're getting like the even more egregious, dumber version of it. It
Mm-hmm.
it's
Bart,
it's
professor said something that raised my eyebrows. That said, this is so bad that if it's allowed to continue, that it's the end of our government. Where the first Article 1 of the Constitution won't really exist anymore. Do you concur with what he just said with that kind of exclamation point at the end?
Yes, I do. I really do. I think Congress has gotten to the point where they're not doing their jobs. Period. Final. End of the story. These guys have abdicated so much power. It's like the president can basically do whatever the hell he damn well wants to. And I know Trump loves to say that, but it's bullshit. The president can't do whatever the president wants. The president has to follow the Constitution and the statutes of the country. And we've got a president who is not going to do that ever, ever, ever. And frankly, to me, that's the nub of the whole issue here.
But it has to be
You
Congress. It
know,
can't be the courts that step in and fix this for Congress. Congress needs to step
no,
in.
Congress has to do it.
Yeah,
Congress could
I agree.
immediately introduce legislation reversing what Trump did. They could nullify this whole thing and go, this is, no, you can't do that. We're putting the money back in the general fund. And if Donald Trump wants to try to sue us because we have breached his contract, go for it, dude. Because that's what he'd have to do. And I think the courts would just go, what? you know, I mean, it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
But Congress is
Okay,
not willing
we're in
to do
agreement.
anything.
We're in agreement. It's a serious issue. It's
Yeah.
surreal, and we have to. And Congress has to solve it, or we have to help Congress solve it. Excellent,
Absolutely.
gentlemen. Thank you for your time today. I know Professor's ready to go for a bike ride, and I'm going to rehab a house. I assume Bart's practicing law. I appreciate
Trying
you
to.
all. We're going to try to meet next week, Bart, and we'll probably talk about the subject again, in addition to whatever else
Awesome.
comes up next week. Professor, thanks for your
Okay. That'll
articulate.
be awesome.
Yeah, thanks for being wise. All right. Have a great day, you all.
See ya.
Yep, you too.
Have a good weekend.